Welcome to the Millennial Rant, a podcast about whatever's bothering me today. With topics ranging from politics to pop culture, there's a rant to cover everyone. For more Millennial Rant content, you can join me on the web at millennialrant.com. It's almost St. Patrick's Day. I've been seeing the festive cheer everywhere, so I figured now was as good a time as any to talk about how offensive I find it that all of these non-Irish people are appropriating my ancestral culture for, an excuse to go out and get drunk and throw parties. Obviously, I am joking. I do not care if people go out and enjoy St. Patrick's Day as a drinking holiday or whatever else they enjoy it as. My family is actually ancestrally Irish. On both sides of my family, we have Irish, and on my dad's side, we're more Scots English, where we went over to Ireland for like 2 generations, and then we moved from Ireland to the United States. And our Irish ancestry on my mom's side is a little deeper, but not that much more. I think it's more English Welsh, but that's not the point. The point is, I think the whole idea of cultural appropriation, especially in the United States, is absolutely asinine. Like, we have all of these people who are acting like culture police, going around telling other people what they can and can't wear, what they can and can't say, how they can and can't speak, how they, can do their hair. And it's really, really obnoxious. And it makes no sense, because if you really get down to it, America in and of itself doesn't have a culture except for arguably our innovation. So if you really want to get on people for cultural appropriation, why aren't we going out to the rest of the world and getting mad at them for appropriating American culture by wearing American style clothes and American style shoes and sitting on American style toilets and living in American style houses and using American style electricity and on and on and on. Listening to our music, watching our movies. We don't have any problems with that. But, some little white girl in Minnesota says that she wants to wear her hair in braids because she saw some girl at school doing it and she thought it was super pretty. And she's just a racist bigot, and she just should not be allowed to put her hair in braids, because doesn't she know that only Africans are allowed to wear braids? What? Are you, what? What is that nonsense? Are you kidding me? Every culture has used braids as something, hair braids in their past somewhere. Some have done whole head braids, some have done, partial braids, some have done, like one long braid or 2 separate braids. In Joseon, Korea, it was the women would wear their hair in one long braid when they were not married. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm literally pulling this from the period dramas I watched. I know next to nothing about Korean culture as a whole. And then when they got married, they would twist that braid up and then they would pin it. I'm sorry if this offends anybody. No, I'm not actually. I really don't care. But braids are not indigenous to Africa. You didn't invent that. You didn't invent any of that. No culture has a hold on braids, okay? And even if they did, who cares? We live in America. We live in a melting pot of cultures and ideas and innovations, and that's how we've grown into what we are. Well, that's how we grew into what we were before we started devolving into what we are. But it's just, it's a wonderful, beautiful, amazing thing to watch people appreciate other people's cultures, to, want to foster those cultures and give them the opportunity to be showcased and enjoyed by everyone. But now we've gotten to a point where if a white man wants to open up a ramen restaurant, he's castigated and stoned basically in the street because he's appropriating Japanese culture. Never mind the fact that he spent 20 years in Japan under the direction of a master ramen chef learning the subtle art of ramen making, and that he speaks the language and he lived in that country, and he knows the actual art and the texture and the history and what it is and what it means and how it works and how the different flavors combine. No, forget all of that. Forget all of that. But some third, fourth generation Asian boy can decide that he's going to open up a top ramen cart, and that's fine. I'm sorry, between the two, who's culturally appropriating here? The one who's using his race to play to a stereotype, or the one who actually went and lived in that culture, who knows and understands it? And maybe that Japanese kid went to Japan and did the same thing, and if he did and he came back and he decides he wants to create a ramen restaurant, I think that's fantastic. But this is America. There's absolutely no reason why the two of them can't have competing ramen restaurants across the street. If we can have two Starbucks in the same shopping center, I think it's perfectly acceptable to have two ramen restaurants, one of which is run by a white guy. We've been seeing this a lot with restaurants. Like, there was a tiki bar that was shut down in California or Oregon or something like that. There were these two women who went to Mexico to learn how to make authentic tortillas. And then they opened up a food cart, and they were basically run out of town. And it's everywhere. And it's absurd and genuinely offensive that you are telling other people what they can and cannot culturally appreciate. Not appropriate. Appreciate. There's no such thing as cultural appropriation. Okay? That's like saying that only one culture has the monopoly on any given trait or feature or idea or whatever. I can guarantee you that within their own culture, every country, every culture, every society has had no problem finding things to discriminate against within their own culture. I mean, look at China. Look at, Africa, the Rwanda, the massacres in Rwanda that happened because one ethnicity, one race was considered different from we are so past this. So past this. Why are we bringing it back? Why are we segregating people and telling them what they can and cannot do and say and be? And it's gotten to genuinely absurd levels. Like, a while ago now, there was that movie Ghost in the Shell, which was it was a movie based off of an anime that came over from Japan, and Americans were up in arms because Scarlett Johansson was playing the lead role, who in the original anime was a Japanese woman, except the entire premise of Ghost in the Shell was that the woman was killed, I think, and her spirit was put into a completely separate body, and she was the ghost and the body was the shell, and she was turned into an assassin, or I've never actually seen either the movie or the show, but just the basic premise, okay? And I would think that people would recognize and even applaud the ingenuity of taking this idea of a traditional Japanese woman and forcing her to live in the body of a white woman in order to fit into society as a whole. And there's a lot that you could potentially unpack there, symbolically and ethically and culturally. But no, we all just decided that Scarlett Johansson is the devil, and how dare she play a Japanese character? They're whitewashed the character. They didn't. But you had all these people who were up in arms in America, and yet there were people who went over to Japan and asked them, this is the trailer for the movie. Scarlett Johansson is playing this character. What do you think? And she looks just like her. This is great. How is it that the most culturally diverse country in the world is the one that has the hardest time accepting diversity in culture? And I don't mean just color. I don't. Because color, I don't believe, makes people diverse. There's so many other things about human beings that make them diverse. It's like if you go to Japan, is it not diverse because it's predominantly Japanese people? If you go to Korea, is it not diverse because it's prominently Koreans? If you go to India, it's predominantly Indian. If you go to, the heart of Africa, it's predominantly Africans. And this goes back to the Zimbabwe, Miss or Mrs. Zimbabwe, I think it's Miss, for Miss Universe, is a white girl. And all of these white American people are just up in arms because this white girl won Miss Zimbabwe, and the people over in Zimbabwe are like, leave our girl alone. We love her. She's great. She's beautiful. She's sweet. She's wonderful. We have no problem with her representing us. It's only seems to be predominantly in America, although the cultures that we have a very heavy influence in, specifically the English-speaking cultures, Canada, England, and Australia, this seems to be pervasive there too. I don't understand it. What I'm trying to get down to in my own convoluted roundabout sort of way, because that's just how I roll, is that there's nothing wrong with appreciating other cultures, with recognizing the beauty there and the richness, and wanting to allow it to continue. Because right now, the predominant culture all around the world is American culture. It's our movies. It's our music. It's our sports. It's our news. We're Americanizing the world. And I think that is really sad, because what America used to be, this hodgepodge melting pot of cultures where everything was kind of spread around and everybody can enjoy everything, it's not like that anymore. Pretty soon we're going to get to a point where you can't walk into a Mexican restaurant unless you're Mexican. You can't eat Chinese food unless you're Chinese. There's an Asian noodle place here in town. At some point, I'm going to try and order my usual tteokbokki, and they're going to tell me I can't have it because I'm not Korean. Where does it stop? Where does it end? Are people not going to be satisfied until we're all living in our own little isolated ancestral countries? Like, are we supposed to split up the states and say, this is little Korea, this is little Ireland, this is little whatever? Where does it end? Where? I for one, I just refuse to go along with it. If I want to put my hair in braids, I'm going to put my hair in braids. If I want to eat Korean street food, I'm going to eat Korean street food. If I want to learn Japanese, I'm going to learn Japanese. And that's nobody's business. None. No. Nobody's. Anywhere. It's mine. How I live my life and the things that I enjoy, what does that have to do with you? I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not being deliberately mean or, condescending to anybody. Most of the time, people are just walking down the street, enjoying their own lives and minding their own business, and then they get accosted because of whatever. Well, what about all of those same people, those same culture police who participate in things like St. Patrick's Day, who participate in Cinco de Mayo, or Dia de los Muertes, I think is how you say that. There's how is that not cultural appropriation? But the way I choose to dress or wear my hair is. You can't have it both ways. Yeah, I get it. We live in a postmodern ideological society. Everything is relative, and your truth and my truth may be different, but it's still truth. No. No. Sorry, not sorry. There is such thing as binary truth. I'm not just talking about sex and gender in there. Sometimes there really is a black and a white. Sometimes there really is a right and a wrong. Sometimes there really is a yes and a no. Sometimes life is just straight binary. And if you're going to act like it is in one instance and like it's not in another instance, that makes you a hypocrite and a bigot and intolerant and a jerk. All this to say, I really do hope you enjoy your St. Patrick's Day and that you cultural appreciate all day long.